2 years down makes me halfway through my psychology degree. And the journey has been so beautiful and interesting. And it's started to shift the way that I view myself, I view people around me, I view the world as a whole. So here are some of the things that I've learned on my journey. So I have my phone here with me because I had to write down some of the main things that really stood out to me during this program. I'm going to do year one and then list the courses. And under the list of the courses, I'm going to talk about what that course taught me, like what was my biggest takeaway. So year one, my first course that was mandatory was Introduction to Psychology. This course was so interesting. I had taken some social studies like way back when I was in high school, and a lot of even like my business program had a lot to do with like the psychology of things. So there were things that I had touched on in like my previous program of business that I took, but these courses really start to dive into it. So year one, Introduction to Psych, this course was actually what made me completely retire weed. And it's something that needed to happen. I burned everything when I did my new age. Like I left new age behind me and I dove headfirst into Christianity again because I grew up a Christian. But this course, when it listed out drugs and things that are that the way that it affects the brain and the things that are so normalized, I was like, I literally went to that class and I was like, I've got to let go of weed. It's something that had carried me, and a lot of people indulge in escapism. I'm not even gonna listen. I was high as a kite, okay? And not even like smoking. It was more like edibles. I'd bake cookies. I would do stuff like that. After I had our class on addictions, I was like, yeah, I'm done. Alcohol, I've been alcohol free since 2019, but weed was something that has been in and out of my life and in and out of my life. And I heavily indulged in it in the last like few years leading up to 2023, which is when I started this program. And honestly, addictions and not being able to break free from them, it's so destructive. It's so destructive. We have to keep monitor and keep our vices in check. And weed especially was one of the last things that I had to let go. And I felt like smoking weed was sinning. A lot of people are going to disagree with me. A lot of people are going to say, it's medicinal, it's this, it's that. And while some of those things may be true, sobriety is something that's so important to me. And when it really boils down to it, I really felt like weed was separating me from God. I don't know how to, not separating me, but creating distance between us in that relationship. So I tossed it, and that was the end of that. I burned it in the fire pit with all my crystals, all all my crystals, all my, what else did I have? Everything. I remember I had this rain thing that used to like, it'd be like shh, and then you turn it the next way, it's like shh, and I swore that calmed me down. But I was still a crash out. It didn't calm me down. One thing that I also learned in this class was, especially as I start to read my Bible like deeper, there's a lot of biblical crossover between, I feel like the more that I learn in my program and the more that I learn about certain things, I feel like science is just the attempt of an explanation of the Bible. There's a lot of like, okay, for example, when they would talk about mental illnesses, like back in like the history of mental illnesses, they would call people demon possessed. I know a lot of people who don't have eyes to see are not going to see it, and ears to hear are not going to understand it. But the earliest recordings of like people like on record having mental illness, they thought it was demons, they thought it was ghosts, they thought it was spirits. They attributed it to, basically the whole thing was like the supernatural. they thought that mental illnesses were a product of the supernatural and like being possessed and all these different things. And then it's interesting because they also talked about dreams. And with dreams, it's like they don't know where dreams come from. They don't know what dreams are. They don't know anything about dreams. There's only theories, and theories are always open to change and are can't be proven in reality. The next step was sleep. Lack of sleep can actually kill you. Stress can kill you. I didn't. It's interesting because it's like a lot of the things that are so important, we don't actually spend a lot more time on them. And sleep is one of those things. It's like we do it every day if we're lucky. In today's day and age, if you're lucky if you get even 6 or more hours. But one thing that I realized was the importance of sleep. The importance of sleep and who you are when you don't have sleep. It's like it can totally change you as a person. So sleep, lack of sleep, how to develop like your circadian rhythm, the sleep cycle was so interesting to me. And for example, one thing that a lot of people do is they'll snooze their alarm, but there's four cycles there's 4 parts of the sleep cycle. I can't talk today. There's 4 cycles of the sleep cycle, and sometimes you'll be in your last, which is like the deepest level, and then you wake up and your body's starting to get like adjust to waking up, and then you press snooze, and then you start to enter the sleep cycle again, and like you feel like you're getting sleep but you're always tired all the time. It's because you start to enter the sleep cycle again, but it isn't complete because you pressed snooze and then you get woken up again. So you're like, I was just falling asleep, but now I'm awake again. And like, it's these little things that make such a huge difference. And I was like, really? That's so interesting. And when it came to dreams can't be explained, but they were saying that sometimes people can control their own dreams. And, we have recurring dreams of the same things. Like another one example was like always being chased or falling or teeth falling out like that. It's so weird. And a lot of people have these same dreams. Like, why are there 50 people in the class raising their hand, myself included, that you had a dream of teeth falling out and you have all your teeth? That's not suspicious to you? Another thing that we touched on, and I'm really hoping that in my next upcoming courses I get to learn more about it, is like, okay, in spiritual terms, we would call it like generational curses and stuff like that, or generational, breaking generational patterns. There's actually a scientific term for it, and it's epigenetics, and how trauma is passed down through DNA. Like, and I'm like, is that not just generational curses? Is that not it? So that's why I say like science is literally an attempt to explain the Bible. The Bible hasn't been proven wrong yet. There's people who are going to argue with this. In my mind, I don't really debate anymore. I'm kind of just like, how is this going to hold up with God? Because we all have to face God one day. So if you know what it is, if you're a Christian, just walk in your truth. There's too many coincidences. After a certain amount of coincidence, the next class I took, I had to take a science class. So I took weather and climate. And I dropped it. I thought this class was nothing that I thought it was going to be. It was calculations and math and all of this weird stuff. And to be honest, my school went on strike. Once they went on strike, I was like, I just needed a reason to drop this class. And I dropped it during Fashion Week because I was like, you know what? I love Fashion Week. This is something that I'm allowed to express myself. I had a project due, I think maybe on the 3rd day of Fashion Week, and I do all 4 days. On the 3rd day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to drop it. I want to enjoy Fashion Week. I don't want to be going home at 11 p.m. doing this assignment that I took one look at the assignment and I was like, oh yeah, we're dropping this class today. I dropped it because you guys go on strike and then expect us to do like 3-4 weeks. No, how long did they go on strike for? I don't even remember. It was probably around 6 weeks. You want us to take 6 weeks worth of learning and cram it in 3 weeks? Please be so for real. I'm dropping the class. I'm not even going to stress myself. But on the first day of class, one thing that I learned was about the Anthropocene. And I hope I'm saying it right. But basically, it's like a timeline, and there's certain events that are going to happen in that timeline. And long story short, humans have been very destructive to the earth, and it's starting to show, and it's getting to a point of like being irreversible. When we really talk about it, like, God is powerful and anything is possible with God. So any of that can turn around in just an instant. But basically the way that it is right now and how it's going to be for the future generations, it's not looking too bright. Like, it talks about the impact of like basically of global warming and like human impact on the earth. And honestly, that was like the first or second class, and it made me so sad to hear. I was like, wow, this makes me sad. It's like, I'm a vegan, I'm doing my part, but it's just sad. It's sad. It's very sad. Can't really tell you much about this class because I didn't finish it. I stopped going to class. It was crazy. People didn't respect the teacher. One time he started crashing out on everyone, and he was in the right. People were not listening. People were just like having their own conversations. People were just talking all over him, and I was like, and it's crazy because I went to class and I was like, I'm not gonna pass this class. The class was a nightmare. I thought it was, honestly, I thought it was gonna be about like climate and like growing stuff in certain climates. I don't know what I thought, but I was like, yeah, no, it was totally different. It was about like, we had a project where we had to take pictures of clouds, and it sounds easy, but then we had to like talk about the type of cloud, talk about the date that it was taken, talk about the weather, the humidity, the index. I was like, no. So that class, don't have too much to talk about. The next class was Introduction to Sexuality Studies. Now, this one was really interesting. I'm not going to go into the details of what the Bible says about like the LGBT community. That's Googleable. We can research that. But I did have a conversation with someone very near and dear to me about being in the community and about God. And we spoke, and I'm not in a position to judge. I can't say this person's going to this place in the afterlife or this person's going this place. But the question that they asked me was, do you think like God still loves me? Do you think God hates me? Do you think I can get into heaven? And it was a very difficult question to answer, but my answer was only something that could flow from the heart, and it can only come from my truth. And while I know what the Bible says, my perspective to that person was, I was like, it's difficult for me to not see you there because you're like, you're so loving and your heart is so pure. And I don't think that God will ever hate you. I don't even think that's possible. But I do believe that God has wrath and it can rain down on certain people. When it really boils down to it, I think that if you're alive, I think when you wake up, I think you have a choice every day to be on God's team. And I'm hoping that it's like a scale. I don't know. I'm hoping that it's a scale and that God measures how good you were and how much of a follower you were. Like this person, when I tell you this person grew up in the church, this person could recite the Bible. Like, it's the level of them being a follower is like more than a lot of people. They know the Bible. They have a relationship with Jesus. They love God. They're a part of the LGBT community though. So they have questions. I think we all have questions. We're all still alive. We've never, fully died and never returned, to say, oh, this is what's going to happen. And there are like near, out of body experiences, near death experiences that we'll talk about that. But that was my answer. I was like, I think as long as you're alive, I think that God is giving you another chance to be close to him. Right? And it's interesting because while I say that hope it's a scale, I'm saying that in the favor of humans. But the truth is, sinning is sinning, right? You have men who lie and cheat and beat and kill women. And of course, there's women who do that to men too. But you have men who lie and cheat and do that stuff. And then you have them turn around and say, I hate the LGBT community. And it's like, you're also sinning. And they try and use like biblical stuff. And I'm like, but you're also sinning too. So I don't know, but that's my perspective on that, because I'm not God. I'm not here to play God. That's a job title. That's for one only. And it's not my place and it's no one else's place. But because of that person, I wanted to take this class. And to be honest, I thought it was going to be some freaky deaky stuff, because I was like, okay, what's behind? I thought it was, I don't know. I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I thought it was going to be about some freaky stuff, to be honest. I really did. I thought it was going to be about some freaky deaky stuff. Like, I'm sorry. In short, I just feel like there's right and then there's wrong. And then it just doesn't feel right to me to treat people of a certain community a certain way because of their life choices. Like, we all have skeletons in the closet. Like, okay, let's open up your closet and see what's inside. So it's nobody's job to play God when it really boils down to it. Another thing that I really learned about this class was like, a lot of people are arguing there's only two genders. And I'm telling you, I used to believe that. Now I'm not so sure. I was an avid believer, like, how could there be more than two genders? Until I was introduced to intersex. The intersex community, there's 30 plus variations of being intersex. So it's basically born with both parts. So the way that they broke it down to me, so you have the physical genitals, you have the chromosomes, and then you have the hormones. And then you have like the choice part of it, where they're presenting, like, how are they presenting? I had to literally write this example down. So one of the examples that was given to us was that someone might have XY chromosomes. So their chromosomes are of a male. They have the physical development of breasts and genitalia of a woman. And they have female hormones. So like, they have more estrogen than testosterone. Like, I feel like we all have both, but they have more estrogen in their body. So honestly, you don't know what people have between their legs. You don't. You don't know what people have going on biologically. And I went down the TikTok intersex rabbit hole and I learned a lot. And one of the questions that our prof posed to us was, if you had a child that was intersex, like they were born with both parts, what would you do? And most people in the class were like, oh, I had to chop off one part and leave that part until it looks normal. And I'm like, okay, but what is normal? Because, for example, there was a girl on TikTok and she was talking about being intersex, and she was born, I think it was her chromosomes were like of a male, and she had like totally female presenting. And I think she had gonads, so basically like balls. She had gonads up. She had like female presenting parts. She had female genitalia, but she had gonads on the inside, and her parents had them removed. But she was saying that as she grew up, even though she looked like a girl, sounded like a girl, she felt like a male. And I thought it was really interesting. It was just interesting, because I'm like, I'm not a part of the LGBT community. I can never understand their lived experiences. So I wanted to learn. I was like, I'm going to be counseling all different types of people from all types of places who have different experiences. I want to be able to help as many people as I can, right? So yeah, that one was really interesting. That whole course was just like, I got a really good mark in that course too. But it's because I was like, I actually was very fascinated by the entire thing. The third class that I had in first year was sexuality, gender, and society. That one was really interesting as well. It kind of, having done introduction to sexuality studies first, it helped me a lot with this class, because this class talked about how it's all multi-layered. So you have like sexuality, like the LGBT community, you have heterosexuality, and then you have race, and then you have society, and then you have culture, and then you have um you have like ableism. You have so many different factors. So it's like we're all such multifaceted beings. Like everybody is so different, and they're gonna try and group us all in like the same culture and as society, but everyone's different. There's always exceptions to the rule. The fourth class was understanding food. So understanding food was interesting because it talked a lot about like GMO, and like, if I was to sum it up, the one thing that it taught me was I'm going to try and make my own food, and I'm going to try and have things as natural as possible. Understanding food and how it works in the body, and like the effect of sugar on the body, the effect, sugar is a drug, the effect of certain stuff on the body. Understanding food was really interesting, and like weight loss, weight gain, appropriate eating amounts. I'm into stuff like that. I'm a vegan. I love stuff like that. We actually made like a class cookbook. It was so, honestly, that class was just cool. The teacher was really, really nice. I went to that class probably the most out of all of them. The sexuality one probably first, and then understanding food. And I think that one was like through the winter too. That class was just good. I don't know. It was good. So on to year two, my class was one of my first classes was writing in psychology. That class taught me a lot about like finding sources and just developing my skills as a writer. Also, like having discussions and responses and stuff like that. That class was really interesting, to be honest. I didn't go a lot. It was really late. It ended at like 11 p.m. It was late. My teacher was super nice. My classmates were super nice. I just didn't go as often, to be honest. I did pass the class. I did pretty well, but, and it did teach me a lot. It taught me a lot about writing that I didn't think writing got. I mean, I knew writing got so deep because it's like it's also a form of artistry, and artistry can get very deep. But it did help me develop as a writer, which I know will carry into some of my courses in my third and fourth year that are going to be more tailored down to what I'm actually trying to do with the program. My next class in my second year was motivation. Motivation was really interesting because it talked a lot about like mindset and like the external and internal factors to that make up motivation. Like motivation is so many things. I think a lot of the times in regular conversation we talk about motivation, but what we really want is discipline. It's like, for example, I've been losing my voice. I've been feeling weird. I don't know. I've just been feeling weird. I'm a little bit burnt out, to be honest, but I made a promise to myself. I want to upload a certain amount of times. I want to talk about certain things, and I want to talk about things while I remember them, to be honest with you, like while they're still fresh. And I took the day off to record. I could be sleeping right now. I could literally be sleeping right now. I could have slept the whole day away, but I decided to come on here because I'm like, this is information that I've been sitting on. I finished school a couple months ago. I finished my second year a couple months ago, like going through the summer. I'm literally about to get into my third year in just a few weeks. And I'm like, you know what? Let me talk about this while it's still fresh before I put all of the information of all the new content that I'm going to be learning in school and relay it to you guys. But yeah, so motivation was interesting. A lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is like needs based. A lot of it is like, there's a lot of studies. The interesting thing about motivation is that it differs from person to person. So somebody else might be motivated by something where I might, like, someone else might be motivated by food to do something where I might have just eaten, so I'm not motivated by food, if that makes sense. So it's like motivation varies. Different things motivate different people. My next class in my second year was social psychology. Social psychology was really interesting. It talked a lot about like group behavior and why groups are important. Like, humans want to be in groups. Humans feel safer in groups. It's really interesting. Like, resources are pooled together, and it's a survival thing to be in a group. So if you're in a period of isolation, I hope that you're using it to refine yourself and rediscover things about yourself and what you want for your life. But don't stay there too long, because it's important to be in groups and to feel senses of belonging. Being a lone wolf is literally for wolves. Humans are not designed like that. Another part about this class that was really interesting was attraction. And it talked about like in like ancient times, like how it has differed. And I'm like, a lot has changed, but also a lot has not changed. So one thing I realized was the features of like physical features changes a lot, like what people find attractive. And like there's, I would say, a level of generalization. Like people generally find like this type of eye shape or something attractive, and this type of facial symmetry attractive. Like it's really interesting. But outside of the physical stuff, which a lot of people care about, which is why I said it first, it also talks about like for example, a lot of guys always ask me like, oh, people, or they'll say stuff like women just want a rich dude or like some baller, when in reality those things are more attractive because they actually have like the finances to take care of you. And it's from a resource standpoint. Like before, it might have been like they have, you know, hunted a lot better, so they have a lot more food. So it's from a resource standpoint. Now that resource is primarily money, but it's from a resource standpoint. Like the more that a person can provide for a woman, usually women are attracted to that type of energy, because they're like, okay, that means that I get to do a little bit, I get to relax a little bit more, I get to have a little soft life. The more that I'm looking at my list, I'm realizing that I low-key organized this list, not in, I did it by year, but in terms of like when I took the course, like first term, second term, I think I organized it by which ones I liked the most. But the next course was plant life, human life. I was in my vegan bag with this class, okay? I loved this class so much. This class went further. It was the same professor as understanding food, and she went further into like certain things. Like, long story short, grocery stores are a scam. You can grow anything you want in the right climate. You can grow what you want, and you can like duplicate food. Like you don't actually have to buy food. It's interesting. That class was different. We talked a lot about like plants and clothing too. I'm in the fashion and beauty industry, so that part I really thought was interesting. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that like this type of material was made out of this, and you know, all the processing for clothing and all, like it was just an interesting class to compare like plant life to human life. It was just good. I loved that class very, very much. Next class was introduction to research methods was the next class. Honestly, this class was at 8 a.m. I very rarely made it on time. I was out of it by the time that I got to that. It was important information though. Like if I was to ever conduct an experiment, this class would help me a lot with it. It was just too early for me. And it's crazy because I'm an early riser, but it was like in the winter. I was trekking out. I got up in the morning and I was like, I'm not going to school today, if we're being honest. But it was an interesting class. It talked about like the different ways of testing, the different ways of creating a hypothesis. This course was really interesting. It talked about like the way that like the group you choose can affect the results, and you know how outlying factors can affect the results, and how the experimenter can affect the results, and how sometimes you need to switch experimenter and change groups and test and placebo, and you know, giving people a certain drug and then giving the other group like a drug, but it's actually just like a placebo drug where it doesn't actually do anything to them, and seeing how they behave. It was a really interesting course. The last class was two classes joined in one, and it was statistics 1 and 2. What did this class teach me? This class taught me that I should have did them one at a time and not together. This class traumatized me. This class showed me that no matter which educator I chose, I would have still been in shambles. I would have still been barfing before my exams. And this class taught me that God is real. Because without the prayer that I put down, I would not have passed it. But those were all my courses. I'm going into my third year. I have my courses picked, and a lot of my classes this year are tailored to the direction, which, to be honest, I don't even know where I'm going to take it, but the direction and where I'm going to be focusing on. So there's a lot more areas of focus this time around. So I'm really excited for these classes, and I can get into it in another episode when my year is done. But I'll try and upload throughout the year. I will be in school, so it will be probably maybe shorter videos, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful that God allowed me to do this. I'm grateful that God gave me the resources, the mic, the camera, everything that I needed to get this information out. You don't have to take the psychology class because you can get some help right here. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for more content.